Picture this. You're 17 years old, standing in your family's pristine Charlotte kitchen, watching your mother carefully arrange golden birthday candles on a store-bought cake. The sweet scent of vanilla frosting fills the air, but there's something bitter underneath. Something that makes your stomach twist with a familiar ache. She's counting the candles twice, making sure there are exactly 21, not 18. Not for you. Why did I even think this year would be different? The thought cuts through Mia's mind like a blade she's grown too familiar with wielding against herself. Tomorrow marks a milestone that should belong to her 18th birthday, the legal gateway to adulthood, the moment she's dreamed about since childhood. But in the Henderson household on Elm Street, nestled among Charlotte's tree-lined suburban streets, where appearances matter more than feelings, tomorrow will be all about someone else. Again. Her older brother Camden is turning 21 on the exact same day, and their parents have made it crystal clear whose celebration takes priority. Camden, the golden son who quarterbacked Myers Park High School to a state championship, who charmed teachers and neighbors alike with his Carolina blue eyes and easy smile, who never had to fight for attention because it flowed to him like water finding its natural level. While Mia has spent years perfecting the art of being invisible, Camden has mastered the art of being unforgettable. "Mia, honey, you understand, don't you?" her mother had said just hours earlier, her voice carrying that sweet southern lilt that somehow made disappointment sound like a gift. "Camden's 21st is such a big deal. We've reserved the private dining room at the Capitol Grill, and with your father's work colleagues coming." The sentence hung in the air like humidity before a summer storm, heavy with unspoken implications. "You understand." Those two words have become the soundtrack of Mia's life, a gentle melody that plays every time she's asked to step aside, to make room, to be smaller so others can be bigger. She understands when Camden's football games take precedence over her art shows. She understands when family photos somehow always feature him prominently while she hovers at the edges. She understands when college fund discussions revolve around his Duke University tuition while her community college dreams are met with practical nods and budget concerns. But understanding and accepting are two different things entirely, and tonight, something inside Mia's chest feels different, rebellious, almost electric. Tomorrow, she won't just understand. Tomorrow, she'll act. As her mother continues fussing over Camden's cake, Mia quietly slips upstairs to her room, where a shoebox hidden beneath her bed holds more than just old photographs and ticket stubs. It contains every $20 bill she's earned babysitting the Morrison twins next door, every tip from her weekend job at the local coffee shop on Park Road, every birthday check from Aunt Georgia that her parents suggested she save for something practical. She's been saving, all right, just not for what they had in mind. If they won't give me a birthday, I'll create my own. The thought doesn't scare her anymore. It thrills her. Because sometimes, the most powerful thing a forgotten daughter can do is refuse to remain invisible. The next morning arrives with the kind of crisp October air that makes Charlotte's suburbs look like a postcard, all golden leaves and manicured lawns stretching toward a cloudless sky. Mia wakes before her alarm, her heart already racing with the weight of her secret plan. Through her bedroom window, she can see Mrs. Patterson across the street watering her chrysanthemums, probably wondering why the Henderson house seems unusually quiet for such an important day. Today, everything changes. The thought pulses through her mind as she reaches for her phone, fingers trembling slightly as she opens the group chat she created last night. Her parents are already bustling around downstairs, their voices carrying up through the hardwood floors as they coordinate Camden's celebration timeline. "Did you confirm the reservation?" Her father's voice booms with the authority of a man accustomed to being heard. "And the photographer for family pictures?" Her mother adds, her tone bright with the kind of excitement Mia has only dreamed of inspiring. But while they orchestrate Camden's perfect day, Mia is orchestrating something else entirely. Her phone buzzes with responses from friends who received her late-night invitations. Sarah from her art class, Marcus from the coffee shop, even her cousin Tyler from Davidson who promised to drive down. Each, "I'll be there," feels like a small rebellion, a tiny crack in the foundation of everything she's been taught to accept. The irony isn't lost on her that she's planning a party on the same day. Her parents explicitly told her there wouldn't be one. But there's something poetic about it too, something that feels like justice served with a side of Carolina barbecue. She's not trying to compete with Camden's elegant restaurant celebration. She's creating something entirely different, something authentically hers. "Mia," her mother calls from downstairs. "Come say goodbye to your brother before we leave for his birthday lunch." She finds Camden in the kitchen, looking every inch the celebrated son in his pressed khakis and button-down shirt, the same shade of blue that brings out his eyes. He's scrolling through his phone, probably looking at birthday wishes from the dozens of people who remember his special day. And for a moment, Mia feels a familiar pang of something that might be envy, or might just be longing. "Happy birthday, Camden," she says, and means it. Despite everything, despite the years of feeling invisible beside his shine, she doesn't hate her brother. She hates the system that made her disappearance necessary for his appearance. He looks up and grins, that effortless smile that has opened doors for him since childhood. "Thanks, sis. Sorry your day got, you know." He shrugs, and she realizes he doesn't know how to finish that sentence. Doesn't have words for the casual way her 18th birthday became footnote to his 21st. At least he noticed, she thinks, and the thought surprises her with its gentleness. Their parents sweep into the kitchen like a well-dressed hurricane, all cologne and perfume and barely contained excitement. Her father adjusts Camden's collar with the kind of attention to detail usually reserved for important business presentations, while her mother checks her lipstick in the reflection of the microwave door. "We'll be back around 4, her mother announces, grabbing her purse and the elaborately wrapped gift they spent weeks selecting for Camden. "There's leftover pasta in the fridge if you get hungry." They flutter out the door in a cloud of birthday celebration energy, leaving Mia standing in the sudden silence of the empty house. Through the window, she watches their Mercedes back out of the driveway, carrying her family toward Camden's perfect day. But instead of the familiar hollow feeling that usually fills her chest when she's left behind, Mia feels something else entirely. Anticipation. Because in 3 hours, this same house will be filled with people who chose to be here for her, who remembered her day without being reminded, who see her as more than just Camden Henderson's little sister. Let the real celebration begin, she thinks, and for the first time in years, the smile that crosses her face is entirely her own. But as she pulls out her phone to confirm final details, she has no idea that by evening, her act of independence will send shockwaves through her family that will change everything forever. How do you prepare for the moment when standing up for yourself means everything you've known comes crashing down? By 2 o'clock, Mia's house has transformed into something magical. The living room that usually showcases her mother's pristine decorating taste now pulses with life and laughter. Sarah arrived first with homemade cupcakes decorated with tiny paintbrushes, a nod to Mia's artistic dreams that her family rarely acknowledges. Marcus brought his guitar and is currently leading an impromptu sing-along on the back porch, his voice mixing with the autumn breeze that carries the scent of Mrs. Patterson's burning leaves. This is what a birthday should feel like, Mia thinks as she moves through rooms filled with genuine celebration. The guest list reads like a collection of people who actually know her, not the version of herself she performs for her parents, but the real Mia who dreams of studying art therapy, who volunteers at the animal shelter on weekends, who writes poetry in coffee shop corners when she thinks no one is looking. These are her people, the ones who remember her birthday without being reminded, who see value in her presence rather than expecting her absence. Aunt Georgia arrives just as the party hits its stride, sweeping through the front door with her signature dramatic flair and an armload of gifts wrapped in newspaper comics, her trademark that always made Mia smile as a child. "Where's my favorite niece?" she announces, and Mia rushes into arms that smell like patchouli and possibility. "Georgia, what are you doing here?" Mia asks, though her heart already knows the answer. "Baby girl, did you think I'd miss your 18th birthday just because your parents decided to throw their priorities at the wrong child?" Georgia's voice carries the kind of truth that cuts through pretense like a hot knife through butter. "I've been watching you disappear in that family for years, and today, you finally decided to reappear." The afternoon unfolds like a scene from the life Mia always imagined she could have. Her cousin Tyler documents everything on his phone, creating the kind of joyful social media content that usually features other people's happiness. Friends from different parts of her life mingle and discover they all share the same fondness for the girl who listens more than she talks, who remembers birthdays and favorite coffee orders, who has been quietly making everyone else feel seen while remaining invisible herself. Speech, speech. Someone calls out as the party reaches its peak, and suddenly everyone is looking at her with expectant faces, waiting for words from someone who has spent years perfecting the art of being background noise. Mia stands in her own living room, surrounded by 30 people who chose to spend their Saturday afternoon celebrating her, and feels something she's never experienced before. The weight of being truly seen. "I don't really know how to do this," she begins, her voice catching slightly. "I'm not used to being the center of attention." "Well, get used to it," Sarah calls out, and the room erupts in supportive laughter. "I guess I just want to say thank you for showing up, not just today, but for seeing me, for remembering that I exist even when it feels like the world forgets." Her voice grows stronger with each word, fed by the energy of people who nod in recognition and understanding. "Today isn't just my 18th birthday. It's the day I stopped waiting for permission to celebrate myself." The room explodes in cheers and applause, and Mia feels tears streaming down her face. But they're not the familiar tears of disappointment or frustration. These are tears of recognition, of finally understanding what it feels like to be valued for exactly who you are. But as the celebration continues around her, Tyler quietly slips outside to take a phone call, and Mia notices him posting video after video to Instagram, documenting a party that exists in stark contrast to the elegant restaurant celebration happening across town. She doesn't think much of it in the moment, caught up in the joy of finally being the star of her own story. "This is what I've been missing," she thinks, watching her friends laugh and dance in the space where she's spent so many lonely evenings. But she has no idea that 20 miles away, her parents' phones are beginning to buzz with notifications that will turn their perfect celebration into their worst nightmare. What happens when the daughter who was supposed to remain invisible suddenly becomes the most visible person in the room? At the Capitol Grill, Camden's celebration is proceeding exactly as planned. The private dining room glows with soft lighting and the gentle murmur of important conversations. Her father's colleagues nod approvingly as Camden discusses his internship prospects with the kind of confidence that comes from never having to fight for attention. Her mother beams as relatives compliment her on raising such an exceptional young man. Everything is perfect, exactly as the Henderson family prefers it. But perfection has a way of shattering when reality comes knocking, and reality arrives in the form of buzzing phones and curious glances. It starts small. A colleague's wife showing something to her husband with raised eyebrows, a cousin checking Instagram and doing a double take. Camden himself pausing mid-sentence as notifications flood his device. What is happening? Echoes through the private dining room as the carefully orchestrated celebration begins to unravel. Mia's father is the first to understand the magnitude of the situation. His face drains of color as he scrolls through post after post documenting a party he knew nothing about, happening in his own home, featuring his daughter as the celebrated guest of honor. The contrast is stark and undeniable. While Camden's celebration feels formal and dutiful, Mia's radiates genuine joy and connection. "How dare she?" her mother whispers, her voice tight with the kind of controlled fury that Southern women have perfected over generations. "In our house, on today of all days." But it's not just the existence of the party that shocks them, it's the scope of it. The videos show a house full of people, more guests than Camden's own celebration can claim. Friends, classmates, neighbors, relatives who chose to drive from other cities to celebrate a girl they barely acknowledged was having a birthday. The social media evidence is overwhelming. Mia's party isn't just happening, it's thriving. Camden stares at his phone screen, watching his sister laugh with an ease he's never seen from her. In every photo and video, she glows with the kind of genuine happiness that can't be staged or performed. For the first time, he's seeing Mia not as his quiet little sister who fades into the background, but as a person with her own circle of people who clearly adore her. "I didn't even know she had this many friends," he says quietly, and the statement hangs in the air like an indictment. Their father's business colleagues begin making polite excuses to check their phones, clearly more interested in the drama unfolding on social media than Camden's practiced stories about campus life. The energy in the room shifts from celebration to speculation, and suddenly Camden's perfect day feels secondary to the rebellion happening 20 miles away. "We need to go home, now." Their father's voice carries the authority of a man accustomed to controlling situations. But there's something else underneath. A tremor that suggests he's beginning to understand that control was always an illusion. The drive home happens in tense silence, broken only by the occasional ping of new social media notifications. Their mother grips her purse like armor, her knuckles white with the effort of containing her rage. Their father's jaw works constantly, grinding through responses to a situation he never saw coming. Camden sits in the backseat, torn between loyalty to his parents and a growing recognition that maybe, just maybe, his sister has been invisible for too long. How did we not see this coming? The question haunts each of them differently as they speed through Charlotte's familiar streets, racing toward a confrontation none of them are prepared for. As they turn onto Elm Street, they can see cars lining both sides of the road, evidence of a celebration that has spilled beyond the boundaries of their carefully controlled world. Music drifts from their own house, laughter and voices creating the kind of joyful noise that their neighborhood rarely witnesses. But the sight that stops them cold is the banner stretched across their front porch. "Happy 18th birthday, Mia," in bold letters that can be seen from 3 houses away. It's a declaration, a statement, a refusal to remain hidden that changes everything. Their father parks behind a car they don't recognize, belonging to someone who cared enough about Mia to drive across town for her birthday. The evidence of their daughter's secret life surrounds them, impossible to ignore or minimize. This isn't just a party, their mother realizes as they sit in the driveway staring at their transformed house. This is a revolution. And revolutions, she knows from her Southern history, rarely end quietly. What do you do when the child you forgot to see suddenly demands to be seen by everyone? The front door opens before they can knock, and Aunt Georgia stands in the doorway like a guardian angel with lipstick and attitude. Behind her, the sounds of genuine celebration continue. Laughter that doesn't need permission. Conversations that flow naturally. The kind of joy that happens when people gather to honor someone they actually care about. Well, Georgia says, her voice carrying decades of barely contained opinions about her sister's parenting choices. Look who decided to show up to their daughter's birthday party. Here we go, Mia thinks from across the room, her stomach dropping as she watches her parents step into her celebration like storm clouds gathering over a picnic. The contrast is immediate and stark. Her parents, still dressed in their restaurant finery, survey the scene with the kind of horrified fascination usually reserved for natural disasters. Camden hovers behind them, clearly uncomfortable with the tension, but uncertain where his loyalties should lie. Meanwhile, Mia's guests sense the shift in energy and gradually quiet their conversations, creating a tableau of 2 worlds colliding in real time. Mia, her father's voice cuts through the diminishing chatter like a blade. "We need to talk, now." But before Mia can respond, something unexpected happens. Her friends don't scatter. They don't make polite excuses and slip out the back door. Instead, they move closer to her, forming a protective circle that speaks volumes about the relationships she's built while her family wasn't paying attention. "Actually," Sarah says, stepping slightly forward with the kind of quiet courage that comes from genuinely caring about someone, "I think Mia's busy celebrating her birthday. You know, the one you forgot about." The room goes completely silent. Even the music seems to pause, as if the house itself is holding its breath. Mia stares at her friend in amazement. Nobody has ever stood up to her parents on her behalf, not in her entire life. Did that really just happen? The thought ricochets through her mind as she watches her father's face cycle through surprise, anger, and something that might be recognition. Her mother steps forward, her smile as sharp as broken glass. "I think there's been some confusion. This is our home, and we didn't give permission for this gathering." "Funny thing about that," Aunt Georgia interjects, moving to stand beside Mia. "Last I checked, Mia lives here too." And 18th birthdays tend to be pretty important milestones, even if some people are too busy celebrating other birthdays to notice. The words hang in the air like a challenge, and Mia realizes this is the moment she's been unconsciously preparing for her entire life. All those years of stepping aside, of understanding, of making herself smaller so others could be bigger, have led to this. A room full of people waiting to see if she'll finally claim her own space. Now or never, she thinks, and takes a deep breath that feels like swallowing courage. "They're right," Mia says, her voice stronger than she expected. "I do live here, and today is my 18th birthday, even if you scheduled it to be invisible." She looks directly at her parents, seeing them clearly for perhaps the first time. "I spent months watching you plan Camden's celebration while pretending mine didn't exist, so I planned my own." "You embarrassed us," her mother hisses, her carefully maintained composure finally cracking. "Your father's colleagues saw those photos. Our neighbors are probably wondering what kind of family we are. Maybe the kind that actually celebrates all their children," Tyler calls out from the back of the room, and several people nod in agreement. Camden has been silent through this entire exchange, but now he steps forward, his face showing the kind of internal struggle that happens when comfortable assumptions suddenly become uncomfortable truths. "Mom, Dad, maybe they have a point. I didn't even know Mia wanted a party. I never asked. Even Camden sees it." Mia realizes, watching her brother grapple with his own role in her invisibility, but her parents aren't ready for this level of honesty. Her father's face has progressed from surprise to fury, and her mother looks like she's calculating the social damage of this very public family dysfunction. Everyone needs to leave, now. Her father's voice carries the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed without question. That's when Mia feels something shift inside her chest, something that has been building for 18 years and finally reaches its breaking point. She looks around at the faces of people who drove across town to celebrate her, who brought gifts and made cupcakes and took time out of their Saturday to prove that she matters. These people see me, she realizes. They always have. And suddenly she understands that the problem was never that she was invisible. It was that her family chose not to look. But what happens when you finally demand to be seen by people who have spent years perfecting the art of looking away? If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell. That way you won't miss the next one. And if you'd like to support the channel, you can even buy me a coffee on Ko-fi. Every little bit helps keep these stories alive. Now, let's get back to it. No. The word comes out of Mia's mouth with such quiet force that everyone in the room turns to stare. Even she seems surprised by the steel in her own voice. But once the word is out, it seems to unlock something that has been locked away for far too long. Did I just say no to my father? The thought both terrifies and exhilarates her, like stepping off a cliff and discovering she has wings. "I'm sorry. What did you say?" Her father's voice drops to the dangerous level that usually makes everyone in the family scramble to appease him. "I said no." Mia's voice grows stronger with repetition. "These people came here to celebrate my birthday because they care about me, because they see me as someone worth celebrating. And I'm not going to ask them to leave just because my existence makes you uncomfortable." The silence that follows is deafening. Mia can feel her heart pounding against her ribs, but she doesn't back down. Around her, 30 people bear witness to the moment a forgotten daughter finally refuses to remain forgotten. Her mother's composure cracks completely. "How dare you speak to your father that way? After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us? By humiliating us in front of the entire neighborhood." "Everything you've done for me?" Mia laughs, but there's no humor in it. "Like canceling my 18th birthday so Camden could have a better 21st? Like forgetting to pick me up from school so many times I learned to walk home? Like missing every art show, every award ceremony, every single moment that mattered to me because it wasn't as important as his football games? Oh God, I'm really doing this." The thought floods through her as 18 years of swallowed words pour out like water through a broken dam. "You taught me that love has conditions," she continues, her voice growing steadier as she speaks her truth in front of witnesses who actually see her. "That I had to earn my place at this family table by taking up as little space as possible. That Camden's achievements were our achievements, but mine were just nice hobbies." Camden winces at her words, and she can see the recognition dawning in his eyes. "Mia, I never meant—" "I know you didn't," she says, turning to her brother with eyes bright with unshed tears. "That's the worst part. None of you meant to make me disappear. You just let it happen. Because it was easier than making room for one more person's dreams." Aunt Georgia moves closer to Mia, her presence solid and supportive. "Tell them the rest, sweetheart. Tell them what you've decided." "The rest?" Mia's mind races, then settles on the conversation she and Georgia had 3 days ago. the one that planted the seed for today's rebellion. The conversation about what happens after you finally stand up for yourself. "I'm moving out," Mia announces, the words feeling both terrifying and liberating. "Aunt Georgia offered me her spare room and I accepted. I start at Central Piedmont Community College in January to study art therapy, and I've already applied for financial aid and a work-study program." The room explodes into shocked murmurs and supportive cheers, but all Mia can see are her parents' faces, her mother's mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water, her father's complexion shifting from red to white and back again. "You can't just leave," her mother whispers, as if the possibility had never occurred to her. "Actually, I can," Mia replies with a calm that surprises everyone, including herself. "I'm 18 today. Legally, officially, completely 18, and for the first time in my life, I get to choose what happens next." She looks around the room at the faces of people who believed in her before she believed in herself, who showed up for her when showing up mattered most. These are her people, her chosen family, her proof that she is worth celebrating. This is what freedom feels like, she realizes, even as her heart breaks a little for the family she's leaving behind. Her father's voice, when he finally speaks, is barely controlled. "If you walk out that door, don't expect us to come running after you." The threat hangs in the air like smoke, designed to make her fold, to make her choose safety over authenticity. But Mia has spent 18 years choosing safety, and it nearly made her disappear entirely. "I know," she says simply. "I've never expected you to come running after me. But maybe someday, when you're ready to see me for who I actually am instead of who you think I should be, you'll know where to find me." The words feel like both an ending and a beginning, a door closing and another one opening simultaneously. But as she looks at her parents' shocked faces, she wonders if standing up for yourself always feels this much like losing everything you've ever known. Is the price of being seen worth the cost of being disowned? The aftermath of Mia's declaration settles over the room like dust after an explosion. Her friends shift uncomfortably, suddenly aware they're witnessing something far more significant than birthday party drama. Camden stares at his sister as if seeing her for the first time, while their parents stand frozen in a tableau of shock and fury. There's no going back from this, Mia realizes, but instead of terror, she feels an odd sense of peace. "You're being ridiculous," her mother finally manages, her voice shaking with the effort to regain control. "You can't just throw away your family over a birthday party. This is childish, Mia. You're acting like a spoiled brat." The accusation of being spoiled would have destroyed Mia just yesterday, would have sent her scrambling to apologize and minimize her needs. But today, surrounded by evidence of her own worth in the form of 30 people who chose to celebrate her, the words bounce off her like rain on glass. "You're right," she says, her voice steady and sure. "I am throwing away my family, but only the version of family that required me to be invisible to function." Sarah steps forward, her face flushed with the kind of righteous anger that comes from watching someone you love be consistently undervalued. "Mrs. Henderson, I've been Mia's friend for 3 years. Do you know how many times she's mentioned feeling forgotten by you? How many times she's made excuses for why you couldn't come to her art shows or school events?" "Sarah, don't," Mia starts, but her friend shakes her head. "No, you've protected them long enough. They need to hear this." Sarah turns back to Mia's parents, her voice gaining strength. "She talks about you like you're strangers who happen to live in the same house. She knows Camden's class schedule better than you know her favorite subject. She's been raising herself for years while you've been busy raising your golden child. Is that really how I sound when I talk about them?" Mia wonders, then realizes with crushing clarity that it probably is. She spent so many years normalizing her parents' neglect that she stopped recognizing it as neglect at all. Camden runs his hands through his hair, his perfect composure finally cracking. "Mia, I swear I didn't know it was this bad. I thought you just preferred to be quiet. I thought you liked being independent." "I did learn to like it," Mia admits, looking at her brother with a mixture of sadness and understanding. "Because liking it hurt less than wanting something I couldn't have." The honesty in her voice seems to hit Camden like a physical blow. God, what kind of brother does that make me? "The kind who didn't know because no one taught you to look," Aunt Georgia says gently. "But Camden, honey, you're not too old to learn. Your sister isn't disappearing. She's just refusing to be invisible anymore. Georgia always knows exactly what to say, Mia thinks, grateful for her aunt's steady presence in the chaos. But her father has had enough of emotional revelations and public honesty. That's enough, he says, his voice cutting through the room like a gavel. I don't care how many friends you have or how many speeches people want to make. You live under my roof. You follow my rules. Not anymore, Mia says simply, and begins moving through the room, quietly asking her guests to give her a few minutes alone with her family. One by one, her friends file out, each offering words of support and promises to help with the move. Tyler lingers longest, documenting the scene with the instinct of someone who understands that history is being made. Within minutes, the house that was bursting with celebration feels hollow and strange. Only family remains: Mia, her parents, Camden, and Aunt Georgia, who has positioned herself clearly on Mia's side of whatever battle lines are being drawn. Mia, her mother tries one more time, her voice softer now, almost pleading. You're overreacting. We can work this out. We can plan a nice dinner for your birthday next weekend. Next weekend. The phrase encapsulates everything wrong with her family's understanding of love. Always delayed, always conditional, always secondary to someone else's needs. Mom, Mia says gently, and her use of the informal address seems to surprise them all. I need you to understand something. This isn't about the party. This isn't about Camden. This is about me finally admitting that I deserve to be seen, and you finally admitting that you've chosen not to see me. The words hang in the air like a diagnosis, true and devastating and impossible to argue with, because the evidence is overwhelming. 18 years of missed moments, forgotten milestones, and a daughter who learned to celebrate herself because no one else would. This is it, Mia thinks as she looks at her family's shocked faces. This is the moment everything changes. But change, she's learning, doesn't always feel like victory. Sometimes it feels like grief for the family you wish you'd had. How do you mourn people who are still alive, but who never really saw you living? 2 hours later, Mia's room looks like the aftermath of a very specific kind of storm, the kind that happens when someone decides to pack an entire life into whatever boxes they can find. Aunt Georgia has proven herself to be surprisingly efficient at dismantling 18 years of accumulated existence, while Camden hovers in the doorway looking lost and uncertain. Am I really doing this? The thought hits Mia as she folds clothes that still smell like the lavender fabric softener her mother has used for as long as she can remember. Her parents retreated to their bedroom an hour ago, the sound of heated whispers occasionally drifting through the walls. Mia suspects they're trying to figure out how to regain control of a situation that has spiraled completely beyond their understanding. For people who have spent their marriage carefully orchestrating appearances and managing outcomes, having a daughter publicly reject their authority represents a special kind of failure. You don't have to take everything tonight, Georgia says gently, folding Mia's art supplies into a box with the care of someone who understands their importance. We can come back for the rest later. Later. The word implies a future where this decision sticks, where Mia doesn't wake up tomorrow and apologize her way back into invisibility. Camden finally steps into the room, his presence filling the doorway like a question mark. Mia, can we talk? She looks up from the shoebox of letters and photos she's been sorting, keeping the ones from friends in Georgia, leaving behind the family pictures where she's either absent or positioned at the edges like an afterthought. What's left to say, Camden? He sits heavily on her bed, his perfect posture finally abandoning him. I need you to know that I never wanted this. I never asked to be the favorite. The favorite. The words they've all danced around for years, finally spoken aloud. I know, Mia says, and means it. That's what made it hurt worse. If you'd been terrible, I could have understood why they chose you. But you're actually a good person, which meant the problem had to be me. The problem was never you, Camden says fiercely, and she's surprised by the emotion in his voice. The problem was them. The problem was me not seeing it happening. The problem was all of us letting it become normal. He gets it, she realizes, looking at her brother's face and seeing genuine regret there. He finally sees what I've been living with. Do you remember when I won that state art competition in 10th grade? She asks, tape gun pausing in her hands. Camden's face goes blank, then fills with shame. No, I don't remember that at all. It was the same weekend as your regional championship game. They drove 3 hours to watch you throw footballs, but they couldn't drive 20 minutes to see me receive an award for the painting that's been hanging in the school lobby ever since. Why am I telling him this? She wonders, then realizes it's because she needs him to understand the weight of what she's carrying. The accumulation of small erasures that eventually add up to feeling like you don't exist at all. Mia, Camden's voice breaks slightly. How many things like that were there? Hundreds, she says simply. Maybe thousands. Little moments where I learned that my achievements were wallpaper and yours were art worth framing. They sit in silence for a moment, siblings finally having the conversation they should have been having for years. Outside, Charlotte's suburban evening is settling into its familiar rhythm of dinner preparations and homework hours. But inside this room, everything that was certain has become uncertain. I want to fix this, Camden says finally. I want to learn how to be a better brother. You can't fix 18 years in one conversation, Mia tells him. But her voice is gentle rather than harsh. But you can start by seeing me going forward, by remembering that I exist even when I'm not standing in front of you asking for attention. Camden nods, his eyes bright with unshed tears. Will you let me try? Even if you're living with Aunt Georgia, he wants to try. The thought fills her with a complicated mixture of hope and caution. I'd like that. But Camden, you have to understand, I'm not coming back. Not to live here, not to pretend this family works the way it is. I know, he says quietly. And honestly, maybe that's what we all need. Maybe we need to see what we lose when we lose you. Maybe they do, she thinks as she watches him struggle with the reality of her absence. Footsteps in the hallway announce their parents' approach, and both siblings tense instinctively. Their mother appears in the doorway first, her makeup carefully reapplied, but her eyes red-rimmed in a way that suggests tears she would never admit to shedding. Mia, sweetheart, she begins, her voice carrying the careful modulation of someone trying to negotiate from a position of weakness. Your father and I have been talking, and we think maybe we've all overreacted today. Overreacted. The word settles over the room like dust, minimizing everything that's happened, everything that's been said, everything that needed to be said for years. We're willing to discuss planning a proper birthday celebration for you next weekend, her father adds from behind her mother, his tone suggesting he believes this concession should solve everything. Something nice, just for you, just for me. The phrase that should sound like everything she's wanted instead sounds like a consolation prize, an afterthought dressed up as an apology. Mia looks around her half-packed room, at the boxes filled with evidence of a life her parents barely noticed, at Camden's face, showing the struggle of someone learning to see clearly for the first time, at Aunt Georgia's steady presence promising a different kind of family entirely. This is the moment, she realizes. This is where I choose who I'm going to be. Mom, Dad, she says, her voice steady and sure, I appreciate that you want to fix this. But you can't fix 18 years of making me invisible with one makeup party. You can't undo the damage with better scheduling. Her mother's face crumples slightly. What do you want from us, Mia? Tell us what you want, and we'll do it. They still don't get it, she thinks with a mixture of sadness and clarity. They think this is about getting something from them, when it's really about giving something to myself. I want you to miss me, she says simply, the words carrying the weight of every birthday, every award ceremony, every moment she needed them to show up and they chose something else instead. I want you to notice the empty space at the dinner table. I want you to realize what you had and what you lost. And maybe, if you're really lucky, you'll figure out how to love me for who I actually am, instead of trying to shape me into someone easier to ignore. The silence that follows is profound and painful, filled with the recognition that some bridges burn completely before anyone realizes they were standing on them. I'm really leaving, she thinks as she picks up the last box, her childhood bedroom already feeling like a place that belongs to someone else. But as she walks toward the door that will take her away from everything familiar, she carries with her something she's never had before, the absolute certainty that she deserves to be seen. 6 months later, Mia sits in the art therapy classroom at Central Piedmont Community College, her fingers stained with paint and her heart full of purpose. The girl who once made herself invisible has become someone who helps other invisible people find their voices through color and creation. Today, she's working with Marcus, a 15-year-old who reminds her of herself, quiet, overlooked, carrying the weight of being secondary in his own family story. This is what I was meant to do, she thinks as she watches him transform his anger into bold strokes of red and orange across the canvas. The apartment she shares with Aunt Georgia has become a sanctuary of authentic living. The walls are covered with her artwork, pieces that her parents never saw because they were too busy looking elsewhere. The refrigerator holds photos from a life she's building deliberately, surrounded by people who chose to see her long before she learned to see herself. Her phone buzzes with a text from Sarah. "Coffee after class? Tyler's in town and wants to hear about your latest client breakthrough." The message represents everything her old life wasn't. Friends who remember her schedule, who celebrate her successes, who make plans that put her at the center instead of the periphery. This is what chosen family looks like, she realizes, typing back an enthusiastic yes. But the most surprising development in her new life has been Camden. True to his promise in her old bedroom, her brother has been learning how to see her. He texts regularly, not just on holidays or when their parents prompt him. He drove down 2 weeks ago to see her art therapy presentation, sitting in the front row with a pride that felt entirely different from the performative family pride she'd grown up watching. "He's trying," she told Aunt Georgia afterward. "It's awkward sometimes, like he's learning a new language, but he's really trying. Some people just need permission to love differently than they were taught," Georgia had replied, her wisdom cutting through Mia's complicated feelings about her brother's transformation. Her parents, however, remain a study in stubborn incomprehension. They call occasionally conversations that feel like negotiations where everyone speaks different languages. Her mother sends care packages filled with items Mia never asked for, as if the right combination of cookies and sweaters might convince her to return to invisibility. Her father fluctuates between anger at her dramatic exit and bewilderment at her refusal to just come home and work things out. They still think this is a phase. She often thinks during these stilted conversations. They still don't understand that I'm not coming back to being smaller. 3 weeks ago, Camden called with news that stopped her cold. They're going to therapy, both of them, together. Mom says she wants to understand what went wrong. The information sits in her chest like a seed she's not sure she wants to water. Part of her feels vindicated. They're finally acknowledging that something went wrong. But another part of her worries about the implications, about whether their version of fixing things will still require her to be the one who bends. "I can't go backward," she reminds herself daily. "No matter what they learn or change, I can't become invisible again." Today, as she guides Marcus through expressing his feelings about being forgotten in favor of his older sister's academic achievements, Mia sees her own story reflected in his pain. But she also sees something she couldn't see 6 months ago. The possibility that being forgotten doesn't have to be permanent. That learning to see yourself clearly can be the first step toward teaching others how to see you. Sometimes, she tells Marcus as they clean brushes together, the people who love us just don't know how to show it in ways we can understand. And sometimes, we have to love ourselves so loudly that it teaches them how to love us better. Do I believe that? She wonders, then realizes that belief and hope aren't the same thing, and maybe hope is enough for now. As she walks to her car after class, autumn leaves crunching under her feet in the same satisfying way they did on her 18th birthday. Mia's phone rings. Camden's name lights up the screen, and she answers with the easy warmth that has developed between them over these months of rebuilding. "Hey, big brother. What's up?" "Mia." His voice sounds different, careful in a way that makes her pause. "Mom and Dad want to know if you'd be willing to meet with them and their therapist. They say they have some things they want to tell you." This is it, she thinks, her heart rate picking up. The moment I've been both hoping for and dreading. "What kind of things?" she asks, though part of her isn't sure she's ready for the answer. "The kind that might change everything," Camden says quietly. "Or nothing at all. But Mia, I think they're finally starting to understand what they lost when they lost you. What they lost." The phrase carries weight and possibility and the terrifying prospect of forgiveness that might or might not be earned. But as Mia looks around at the life she's built from scratch, surrounded by people who see her clearly and choose her daily, she realizes something profound. Whatever her parents have learned, whatever they want to say, she's no longer the same girl who needed their validation to feel real. And maybe that's exactly the person they need to meet. What happens when the daughter who learned to see herself clearly finally gets the chance to be seen by the people who taught her to disappear? Change comes slowly to families that have spent decades perfecting their dysfunction, but it does come. Mia learned this 6 months after her 18th birthday revolution, sitting in a therapy office across from parents who looked smaller somehow, diminished by the recognition of what their choices had cost them. They looked nervous, she thought, watching her mother fidget with her wedding ring and her father stare at his hands. When did I become the person they're afraid to disappoint? The session wasn't magical. There were no dramatic apologies or perfect explanations that erased 18 years of invisibility. Instead, there were halting admissions of blindness, awkward attempts at understanding, and the slow, painful work of people learning to see clearly for the first time. Her mother cried when she realized she couldn't remember the last time she'd asked Mia about her dreams. Her father struggled to explain how Camden's achievements had become easier to celebrate than Mia's quieter, more complex talents. "We didn't know how to love two children differently," her mother had whispered, the admission hanging in the air like smoke. "But that was your job," Mia replied, her voice gentle but firm. "To figure out how to love both of us for who we actually are." I said that out loud, she marveled. And it didn't destroy anyone. 6 months later, her family is still learning. Camden has become her unexpected ally. Someone who remembers her birthday without being reminded and texts her photos from art galleries with messages like, "This reminded me of your work." Her parents send awkward but genuine messages about her achievements in art therapy school. Their pride clumsy but real. "It's not perfect," she often tells herself, "but it's honest." The most profound change, however, has been in Mia herself. The girl who once made herself small to avoid disappointment has grown into a woman who takes up space with intention and grace. Her work with young people struggling with family neglect has shown her that visibility is a skill that can be taught, that self-worth is a muscle that grows stronger with use. "I teach people how to be seen because I learned how to see myself," she realizes, watching a new client discover their voice through art. "My pain became my purpose." Last week, Camden called with an update that made her smile. "Mom asked me to teach her about your artwork. She wants to understand what she missed." The image of her mother taking art appreciation lessons from Camden felt like justice served with a side of irony. Maybe that's what healing looks like, she thought. People learning to see what was always there. Today, as Mia prepares for her second year of art therapy school, she carries with her the knowledge that she survived her own disappearance and chose to reappear on her own terms. Her 18th birthday wasn't just a celebration, it was a declaration that she would no longer wait for permission to exist fully in her own life. The forgotten daughter learned to remember herself. And in doing so, she taught her family that love without visibility isn't love at all. It's just hope dressed up in good intentions. "What's your story of becoming visible?" she often asks her clients. "What would it look like to celebrate yourself even if no one else does?" Because sometimes the most radical thing you can do is refuse to remain invisible in your own life. Sometimes the daughter who learns to see herself clearly becomes the mirror that shows everyone else what they've been missing all along. That 18-year-old girl who planned her own party saved my life, Mia thinks as she looks toward a future built on the foundation of her own worth. She taught me that love doesn't require permission. It just requires the courage to believe you deserve it. Thank you so much for staying with me until the very end of this story. If it touched you or made you think about life in a different way, don't keep it just for yourself. Share it with someone who might need to hear this too. And if you truly want to support this channel, please subscribe, turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new story, and leave your thoughts in the comments below. I love reading what you have to say. And finally, if you really enjoyed it and want to help keep these stories alive, consider buying me a simple coffee on Ko-fi. Even the smallest gesture makes a big difference and helps us bring more stories like this to you. Thank you, and see you in the next one.